title is Point Slope Form. So if you want to fold it in, like you see here, you can definitely do that. Okay, or if you want to leave it flat out, that's totally up to you. If you're going to treat it like a foldable, you need to make sure that you glue it into your spiral so it doesn't get lost. There will be sometimes I will tell you you're able to use your foldable notes for a particular assignment that's going to be graded, so you need to make sure you have it. Okay, you don't want to lose it. Now, this is an excellent note sheet on the different situations you're going to be given today to write an equation in what we call point slope form. Now, recall what we already know. This is what we already know. This is the form we've talked about for the past couple of weeks, slope-intercept form. And basically, y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form. M represents the slope in this form. B represents the y-intercept. Okay, that's what you just had your last test on, slope-intercept form. Another form, which is the new form we're talking about today, is called point slope form. And the way that you actually name these helps you to know what two things you need for the particular form. So for this particular form, we're going to be looking for a point and a slope. Okay, those are the two things we're going to need. Like up here, the two things we needed was the slope and the y-intercept. So if you pay attention to the name for this form and this one, it sort of tells you what two things you need to know. All right. Now, let me just point out where you will be putting these two things. So in this particular form, which is this form right here, the only pieces that you'll be putting in will be this number, and this number. So your point will be identified as x1 and y1, so that will go here. And then the slope obviously is m. Okay, that will go there. These two things right here will remain stationary. So that means they are not going to move. Okay, those two you do not fill in. They just stay in the form. And that's it. Okay. Now, eventually we're going to learn another form after this. And that's the thing about this particular unit. So our last unit and this unit really is one unit together. We just separate it into two parts. But another form you're going to learn is called standard form. We'll do that later, okay, probably on Wednesday. Okay, that's going to be the form that you're going to learn then. So you're going to have to know all three of these forms for an equation. And so we're taking them one by one. All right, so first tab you should have is write an equation in point slope form. Now, if you are given, says a point right here, write an equation in point slope form of a line that has this point, okay, passes through this point, and has this slope. If you're given the point and slope, just like if you were given the slope and y-intercept, it's very easy to tell where the numbers go. So we're going to take this point here, we're going to call it x1, y1, and our slope is we already know it's called m. So we have everything we need to know. We don't even have to find anything. So we know the y1 number will go there, we know m will go here, and we know x of 1 will go there. And I've already told you before, these two will just remain there. You don't need to fill those in. So this one is just a matter of dropping the numbers into their right places, and there's your answer. My y1 number was 3, it goes right here. My m was 2, goes right there. My x of 1 was 4, there it is right there. And my x and y, they stay where they were. Now, you don't do anything else with that information. You don't solve it. You don't distribute, because if you do that, then you're then taking it out of this particular form. which is called point slope form. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Then the next one says you try. So I'm going to set it up so you'll know which one is X1 and Y1. Of course, you would know that. And they tell you your slope is -6. So take those numbers, drop them in their proper places, and see what you come up with. It's always a good idea to write this form down first. Okay. All right, this is what you should have. That should be a plus sign. Now, why did it change to a plus? Because minus a -1. Okay, minus a negative means a plus. So that's why that changed to a plus. Okay, your slope is -6 and your x of 1 was 7. And that's all you do. All right, just putting the numbers where they go. So that's if you're given the point and the slope, there's no work to do except for put them in their proper places. Any questions so far? All right, so now what if you had to graph? All right, so let's take a look. And we're going to start here. So if they give you this equation, and let's go up, this is all they give you, and they say, now graph this. Now we know how to graph in slope-intercept form. We start with the y-intercept, and then we do the slope. Okay, if you're graphing from point slope form and they're giving you an equation and they say graph this equation, then you have to start somewhere. You can't start with the slope. So put up here, start with the point. So you have to figure out which two numbers would be the point. Okay, so now here's point slope form. So this is my x number, this number here, which would be what? 3. And my y number, well, that changed from a +2, so that means the original number was a what? A -2. So you're going to start with the point 3, -2. That's where you're going to start to graph. All right, because you can't start with the y-intercept because it's not in slope-intercept form, so you start with the point. So you got to be able to identify the point. Make sure this number over here, that's your x, this number is your y. If it's a plus, that means it had to be negative, right? And then we know this number is your slope, okay? So let's take a look. So you're going to start with 3, -2. This is your starting point right here. Okay, so graph 3, -2, put a dot there, and then you do your slope number. So from there, you go up 2 over 3, and there's your other point, and then you do a double negative down 2 to the left 3. And now you have your graph. So your starting point is the point that you get from point slope form. Okay. Just got to know where to start. You start with the point because you don't have a y-intercept here. All right. Okay, let's do the you try one. So here, you're going to start with the point. So since that's a +1, that's -1. So your point starts with -1, +1. That's that point right there. Your slope number is 3/4, so then we can go up 3 over 4, and then we can also go down 3 to the left 4. And now you have your graph. That's how you graph in point slope form, starting with your points. Okay. All right, any questions on how to graph? Because you're going to have to do this for homework. Any questions on how to graph in point slope form? So what do we start with first? You start with the point, then the slope. Okay. All right. Here's a different situation. Write an equation from a graph. So what if you're given the graph? Okay, so here's the graph right here. Here's our graph. And now they're telling us to put this in point slope form. Now this one says use the right hand point. So that would be, you know, this point right here. But we're going to do both because I want you to be able to do both. So if you have a graph, you identify a point on the graph. Here they have identified 2. So we're going to do both of them. So if I take this point here, it's just going to be y minus 1 equals. Now you do have to find the slope from the graph. So if I do the slope from here, because you got to know the slope. Okay, so this is like up to, and then negative 2. So 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. That's your slope number. So that's where this negative comes. You remember we never write the 1. So negative. That's why you just see it as written as negative. Because remember, this number out here is your slope number. Don't write it as negative 1. Just put a negative. Because again, we just don't write that coefficient 1. And then your other point for the x was also 1. So that's how you get the x minus 1. Now, I did the other point as well. Y minus 3, looking at this point, equals negative again for the slope. And then x plus 1, change to a plus because that's a negative, minus a negative. All right, any questions on that? Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to the next one. All right. So the next one is the you try. So what I want you to do is to take this equation. I'm not going to show it to you just yet. Okay. I want you to take the graph. I want you to figure out what the slope is. And then I want you to give me both equations. Okay. So I'm going to pause this and let you work that out. All right, here are your two answers. For the point 2, 4, you should have y minus 4 equals 3 times x minus 2. And again, you had to put that little note there, find slope first. Okay, write that on your paper. So my slope was 3. And then when I did the other point, 1, 1, it would be y minus 1 equals 3 times x minus 1. Okay, so the most important thing here is to know where to start. You got to start with finding the slope, and then you can put both of these into point slope 4. All right. All right, here's our next one. What if you're given 2 points? So these are all the situations you're going to come across for your homework. So if you're given 2 points, let's see what you do first. So first, find the slope using the slope formula. Please write that down. This is the first thing you do because you got to know where to start. So first, find the slope using the slope formula. And then I put the slope formula over here. And I know that's a formula you guys should know by now. All right. So I'm going to give you a minute to take these 2 points that they're giving you in the problem. And I want you to use the slope formula and tell me what the slope is. Okay, so I'll pause this again so you can find the slope. So you should have m equals negative 2 for the slope. Okay, so you should have m equals negative 2. Now, we're going to use one of these points to now, I'm going to ask you to tell me if I use this point right here, and we already know the slope is negative 2. Okay, so we got to drop them in the right places. Who can tell me the equation if I use the point negative 2, 3? Okay, go ahead. All right, very good. Okay, so here we go. Y minus 3 equals negative 2 times x plus 2. Now, if I do the other point, okay, I'm going to have y plus 3 equals -2 times x minus 1. Okay, so that would be for the point 1, -3. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. All right, so there's a you try on the next page. So go ahead and try this one. So the first thing you're going to do is use your slope formula to find the slope. Okay, and then I want you to put both of these points in point slope 4. Okay, so I'll pause this again. We should have 2 minus 4 at the top, -1 plus 4 at the bottom. So that gives us a -1/2 when we reduce that. Okay, and then if we write one of the points, we're using the point -5, 4. Y minus 4 equals -1/2 times x plus 5. And then your second one would be y minus 2 equals -1/2 times x plus 1. Okay. So these are the 4 situations you'll have for your assignment. So if you would go to your packets, okay, starting with this is page 1. So again, the first situation we had is the first situation you had on your foldable, where you're given a point and a slope, so you just put them in their proper places. Fairly easy to do. Second part is asking you to graph this. So you start graphing by taking the point first and then doing the slope number. Okay, now go over to the next page, page 2. They identify 2 points for you. So you're going to write both equations, but the first thing you would have to do is obviously find the slope. So these are the exact same examples you have in your foldable. These are the last 4 questions we just did, okay, where you're given 2 points, find the slope, and then write the equation. Now, this one here, I want everyone to look at question 15, because I did not give you one like this, but let's just take a look at the very last 2 questions so you'll know exactly what to do. So I will do 15 and then you'll do 16. It says write an equation in point slope form using the given point and slope. Then continue to simplify and write it in slope intercept form. So that's the y equals mx plus b. All right. So you might want to write this down. I've already written this in point slope form. Okay, this is question 15, so you'll be able to do 16. So I just put it in point slope because that's what it says first. Put it in point slope form. Now they want me to change this so it's in this form, y equals mx plus b form. So in order to do that, I have to solve it for y. So I have to distribute first. So that's going to be 4x minus 8. And then to solve this for y, I'm just going to subtract 5. And now it's into slope intercept form. So it's really easy to go from point slope to slope intercept form because it would just be a matter of distributing and solving for y. Okay, so that's an easy way to get to slope intercept form. Okay, easy way. All right, any questions? Okay, so you guys will follow your calendars for your classwork today.